Hey guys, I probably shouldn't be making this video because I'm pretty tired today, to say the least. But I want to address a point made by one of my, I think he's a sub of mine, and I want to refine some of the things I said and expand upon some of the things I said in the previous video, that is Suffering Robin Williams. Now, I honestly, I'm not just saying this for the sake of saying this, don't know if this guy's a troll or not. I don't think he's understood the argument. So I'll clarify here, but let me read off to you what he said. He said, your argument is that we cannot fundamentally understand one another because of your definition of a transient and indecipherable neurochemistry, an aspect of human existence which you provide your evidence for. You assume a relativistic stance from behind the word neurochemistry. I draw contention with that. I think we can generalize across the species, just as you have in this channel, wrong preposition, on men and women and their sex-based interaction. There are reasons why people are depressed, just like there are reasons why women are hypergamous. How society is organized along the lines of a general understanding of the human animal and its response to incentive and disincentive. Now, let me first apologize. I think this misunderstanding might have arisen due to my imprecise use of language. We tend not to think about these things, and given my morbid state of exhaustion these days, even as someone who's effectively was a trained linguist, I don't even think about these things. But let's look at the word understanding to begin with. Understanding is not entirely coterminous with comprehension or comprehend. I should have used the word comprehend in the previous video for a number of reasons. The most important reason is that understanding doesn't just imply comprehension. When you say you comprehend something, it means understanding with respect to the mechanics, to its workings. When you say you understand something, you say, oh, I understand you. You're implying sympathy and empathy as well. It's implicit. It's implicit in the word. When you say, I comprehend you, any native speaker can sense this, and you don't need to be a trained linguist per se to even understand this. You understand? Yeah. We kind of just use both words back and forth sometimes. Comprehend is a lot less common than understand, but anyone can comprehend this there. I should have used the word comprehend. So I believe this young man is using understand in the sense of comprehension, and so I will swap out the word, because understand, as I said, has this, it's a bit loaded. It has a term, it has additional meaning to it. It means, yes, comprehension, but it also means in certain contexts, and clear in the context of I understand you, I understand your problems, yada, yada, yada. It implies sympathy, empathy, and the ability to relate. And I want to get to that in a little bit. That is relating, which is very, very different from comprehension. So let's go back to this. Your argument is that we fundamentally cannot comprehend one another because of your definition of a transient indecipherable neurochemistry, an aspect of human existence which you provide your evidence for. So sticking with comprehension, I never said, and this is, as I said, due to my own lack of precision, I never said we cannot comprehend neurochemistry. Of course we can. I don't think it's transient, and I don't think it's indecipherable, to a degree at least. We're not at the stage where we can decipher, measure out neurochemical levels to an absolute T, but eventually we'll get there. We can comprehend that mighty fine, I think. We can totally comprehend that. The problem is understanding, which is, once again, has that implicit addition of relating, empathizing, sympathizing. The problem here is not comprehension. And let me give you an example. You know, I suffer from my chronic illness, but one thing I guess I've been, yes, blessed to never experience this would be the headache. I've never really experienced headaches, and certainly I don't know what a migraine is. I can't even fathom what that is, and I cannot understand what it is. I cannot relate to it. So Stardust has never had a migraine that he knows of. Stardust has a friend who has frequent migraines, complains to him or shares. And so I can research migraines. I can learn about the cause and what they do to the body and how they affect a person. And after a bit of research, I will have arrived at some level of comprehension. I will comprehend what a migraine is, what the etiology of a migraine is, how it affects a person in a general sense. I will comprehend all of this. I still won't understand it. I still will not be able to relate to it. Because my friend who has these chronic migraines has a condition which I do not share. I can comprehend it. I can comprehend it on the most basic level. I could spend a year studying migraines and learn all there is to it, and if I still, in my life, have never experienced a migraine, I will not be able to understand it. And I'm continuing the distinction between comprehend and understand. And I will not be able to relate to it. So really, when we're talking about understanding, in the context of, oh, if I can do it, he can do it, we're really talking about relating. We're talking about relating to person X's problem from our perspective, from our I perspective, our ego perspective. This is not the same thing as comprehension. So let's briefly backtrack to Robin Williams. The same situation. Let's imagine some future scenario where Robin Williams is still alive, that we can measure to a T the body's chemistry and the hormonal levels, everything. We measure out Robin Williams' serotonin levels, what his receptors look like. We measure his oxytocin, estrogen production, testosterone, everything we can. To a T, we have it all written out on a sheet, a data sheet. We look at the data sheet; it's all there. And assuming we understand these things, or maybe we're endocrinologists, or neurologists, or both, we understand it. Not, we comprehend it. Yes, we comprehend all the data. What do the data tell us? Well, that this receptor was turned off and blah blah blah. Okay, we comprehend that. We are not relating to that whilst we are comprehending that. This is an important, this is not just mumbo jumbo. Understanding has a different meaning in a certain context, in the context I use, than does comprehension. So we comprehend Robin Williams' neurochemistry. We don't understand it. We cannot relate to it. How could we possibly relate to it? Well, let's do a thought experiment here. Let's imagine that it's possible to measure out to a T someone's bodily chemical levels. Take that. We reproduce it synthetically. This is just a thought experiment, and implant it into another person. Well, you say, okay, now the person can relate. Maybe, only you're taking those levels, all those chemicals, reproducing them synthetically, and transferring them to a different person with a different genome, with a different genetic makeup. And this person, we'll call him person X. Person X responds differently, develops slightly different symptoms, feels somewhat different, and really is not identifying himself, at least entirely, with the aforementioned person, Robin Williams. How could we make it so? Well, the only way to do that is to swap our genes, our DNA, and those exact biochemical, neurochemical levels, and then effectively you are Robin Williams. So it's not a question of relating; you are him. I'll give you another example. Steroids. Person A injects 500 milligrams of testosterone enantate, which is an oil-based ester, synthetic testosterone. It has a half-life of about 10 to 12 days. 500 milligrams a week. Person B does the same. Totally different responses. They are injecting exogenous testosterone, identical amounts of it. Different responses. One guy is very sensitive and develops gynecomastia. That's when you get the kind of puffy nipples. They're called bitch tits in the bro science slang. Develops acne, but also responds really well. His protein synthesis is up, and and within weeks he's just gaining massive amounts of muscle. The other guy isn't really experiencing too many symptoms, but it's not really working for him very much. Now, you might think this is bullshit, but I've seen this dozens of times in the course of my life. People taking identical amounts of synthetic steroid compounds with totally different effects. Now, let's get back to the main point. Can we comprehend what's going on? Of course, we can comprehend it. We can do a science experiment. We can say, person A, the guy with the side effects, but also with the positive muscle building anabolic effects, we can say that person has much more effective steroid receptors. In fact, it's obvious that he does if he's responding to it both in the negative sense and the positive sense. And we can say about person B, that guy's steroid receptors aren't all that great because A, he's not responding in a negative sense. He's not getting any of the negative feedback. He's not getting the upped estrogen levels, which then lead to gynecomastia, bitch tits. He's not getting the acne, but he's also not getting that much stronger, and his hypertrophy, that is, his muscle growth, is limited compared to the other guy. We can comprehend this fine. Now, these two people get together and they talk about the identical experience of injecting 500 milligrams of testosterone enantate, let's say both into the left shoulder for the hell of it, and they come back with totally different stories. And then they meet up with each other and they say, really? When I was using this, yada, yada, yada happened. And this doesn't need to be as exotic as exogenous testosterone. I mean, you could talk about coffee. Person A drinks a cup of coffee, person B does. Person B feels nothing, the other guy. Person A is wired like he's on crack cocaine. We can comprehend this. They can comprehend the differences. Can they relate to each other? No. They both engaged in identical chemical process. In both cases that I mentioned, the former and the latter, in case of the exogenous testosterone administration, 500 milligrams a week, as well as just drinking a cup of coffee. And how is this possible? How is it possible that they cannot relate to each other, although they're engaged in identical activities regarding very distinct chemical processes? It's because they're different people. It's very simple. And so whilst they can comprehend each other, that understanding, in the sense of empathy, relating, that relation is lost. I cannot relate. If I'm a person who doesn't get wired like as if I'm on crack from drinking a cup of coffee, and I do know people who do that, I can comprehend it. We could take that person aside. We could measure his his adrenaline levels. We could do a whole lot of things. But unfortunately, that's not going to give you the ability to relate to him in the sense that is implied in the word understanding. Okay? So I think these are, in fact, sufficient, very distinct examples so far to explain the difference between understanding and comprehension. I don't think human beings are particularly limited in the realm of comprehension. I think, given time, we can comprehend almost everything. There's going to be a lot of trial and error, a lot of mistakes made, but I think we can comprehend. Subjective personal experience, we can comprehend descriptions. Relation, understanding it, relating to it, is something very different. So I think basically what this guy mistook here was I sloppily used the word understanding. I shouldn't have done that, but he's using comprehension in lieu of understanding, and he's making the same mistake. He's not making that semantic distinction here. It's not indecipherable. It's not transient. It all can be measured. That's not going to do jack shit as far as relating, because, as I said, example of the steroid users, example of the coffee drinkers, and we can use it with antidepressants. Someone takes, 100 milligrams of Prozac, another does as well. The side effects will be different. The beneficial effects will be different. I mean, it's going to be kind of hit or miss, and even if we could measure that all out to a T, there's no way, unless we actually one person literally becomes the other person, that you're going to be able to transfer that person's subjective experience to the other person because, well, they're different people. So there is no relativistic stance behind the word neurochemistry. And once again, this is ever to clarify, this generalizing across the species. Of course we can do that. We can generalize hypergamy, we can generalize women, and it's correct to do so. Then have two individual women talk to each other and with their respective hypergamous instincts, unbeknownst to them, obviously this is instinctual, and they're going to have a different expression of that. It's going to be the same basic hypergamy, the same generalized sense, the same, let's marry up, let's get the bigger, better deal thinking. But for one woman, it's representative of something else, something specific or something different. Maybe she's interested in luxury cars. It's very minor, and someone else will be more interested in luxury dining, and the cars are less important, and what have you. And they want ambitious men, but one characterizes ambition solely along financial lines, and the other more is into status, pure status. So you're going to get variation of hypergamy, say, within the hypergamous female population. We're still generalizing. And because those individual women are hardwired differently, they're going to react to situations differently, they're going to be attracted to different kinds of men, and so on and so forth. They're still hypergamous, just like those guys are still injecting testosterone, but they're approaching their hypergamy from individual standpoints, or rather individual instincts, that differ from each other. It's that simple. So of course there are reasons why people are depressed, and we can guesstimate. Actually, there's some contention, some with regards to, say, SRIs, serotonin reuptake inhibitors, whether it's a question of receptors being fucked up or too much serotonin production, which leads to downregulation. But that's another story. Why are people depressed? Yeah, you can definitely generalize that. The only argument I was making was we cannot relate our individual circumstances, the people we are, our unique suffering, our unique experience, the experiential, to someone else, such that he or she understands, relates to it in identical fashion. Which is why it is incorrect, or not, or rather fallacious, I wouldn't say incorrect, to say the Gene Simmons, well, my mother went through X, totally different situation, totally different person, so person across the world in Seattle or Vancouver or whatever, that person, he's just, I don't know, he has no right to feel the way he does. He just, at the end of the day, he just feels the way he feels, right? There's no relativistic stance here. Absolutely, you can generalize depression. You can generalize every human condition. There's a physiology behind it. There's a neurochemistry behind it. There's a biochemistry behind it. But when you get to individual levels and people's reactions to certain processes, that's the stage at which we have to some degree, cease to generalize, and we have to take it on an individual basis. This is true of so many things. Any one of you who's not done so, I suggest you start lifting weights and do it for a couple of years. As someone, I've been lifting weights for off and on for 10 years now, and paying attention to my nutrition more or less in that time, sometimes more, sometimes less. This will actually be a very valuable lesson. You'll see how you react to weight training. You'll see different bone structures, different ligament structures, different muscle belly structures. You'll see some guys with massive pecs, some guys with no pecs, tiny legs, and so on and so forth. More importantly, when you engage in nutritional habits, yeah, there are some guidelines, there are some guidelines. The Lord's, that is, the gods know. Anyone who's spent any time in nutritional science, and I consider myself informed, but nobody agrees about anything really. So yeah, we can describe carbohydrate metabolism in the human body. We can say, okay, you eat a Snickers bar, carbohydrates in their system. Pancreas gets notified. There's sugar, there's glucose in your body. insulin gets released to push the blood sugar levels down. At the same time, the glucose is going to either be funneled into the muscles and or liver, depending how depleted you are, in the form of glycogen, that is the basically muscle sugar, or fat reserves if you're in a surplus, or the muscle is full or filled up already. So we can describe that. We can totally generalize that. That's what happens with every human being who doesn't have diabetes 1 or 2. That's what happens with every human being. You eat some carbohydrates, some sugar, pancreas gets a response, releases insulin, blood sugar levels go down. Insulin is a storage hormone, stores fat, stores amino acids, stores glucose in the form of glycogen. Boom, okay. Hey, but start experimenting on yourself. Start looking at the science plans. Start looking at some of the studies. And oh my boy, oh God, you will see just the difference in how that all works. I mean, why some people are more, why do some people have better insulin sensitivity than others? Well, it's pretty much genetics at the end of the day, but you can generalize that. And then when you look at specific examples, they won't really check out with that particular generalization. Not to say the generalization is incorrect. It's just in the devil's in the details. People say, I mean, this is fundamentally true, that for explosive exercise activities, weightlifting, sprinting, you need glycogen, i.e. you need carbs. When I'm not too tired and I lift, and right now I've been ketogenic, that is basically almost very low carb for about 2 weeks now. When I lift on low carb, I don't notice any difference in my strength. I don't notice any strength loss. Most people do. This is obviously a peculiarity of my body, but I can eat my steak and eggs and broccoli in the morning and have almost no depleted glycogen reserves, do the same deadlifts I would with carbs or without, or the same pull-ups or chin-ups or whatever. Point I'm trying to make, and I know I'm talking about this a lot, is that generalized statement is absolutely correct, but the devil is in the details when you look at individual behaviors in particular, but also in particular individual biochemistry, genetics, and how people react. I mean, there are hundreds of examples, ranging from steroids to any sort of chemical consumption. And like I said, if you haven't lifted weights, start lifting weights. You will just see, it will blow your mind just to see how important genetics are, but also understanding your own metabolism. I mean, even in an instance where you say, a calorie is a calorie, it's not quite the case that a calorie is a calorie, because a fat calorie is metabolized differently than a carbohydrate calorie, and likewise a protein calorie. And so the devil is certainly in the details. There's nothing relativistic about it in the sense that the generalizations hold true. Where it does become relative, and relativism exists, that is to say, there are some things that are objectively true. Women are hypergamous, objectively true. Relativistic is to what degree each woman is hypergamous and how that hypergamy manifests itself. Likewise, absolutely true, generalized statement. If you eat carbohydrates, your pancreas will produce insulin as a response to lower the blood sugar levels and pump that glucose into the muscle and liver and or fat cells because it's a storage hormone. Okay, absolutely true. The degree to how efficient you do that, your insulin sensitivity, how much of the glucose arrives in the depleted muscle to fill that muscle up with glycogen again, how much of that glucose is then stored as fat, all down to individual metabolism and individual biochemistry. So I should have made that distinction. I'm making it here, clarifying myself. And getting back to the main point, yeah, relating your subjective experience to someone is not the same as comprehending that. And it's a super important distinction to make, because if we, and as I did, I was tired and I still am, we conflate understanding in the sense it's being used here with this I relate to it, I get it, I feel for you, to comprehension, the two really apples and oranges here. I think we can pretty much comprehend almost everything out there. Almost. Understand, not so much. To understand, that is to relate. I keep on saying understand, relate. They're basically synonymous in this sense. You would have to literally be that person. Person describes a scenario to you. It goes back to migraines. Yeah, I understand it in the sense that I comprehend it. I cannot relate to it. So I think it's pretty clear now what was intended to be said and what I mean by this. Nothing indecipherable about it. You can measure a lot. You certainly can measure. I mean, going back to the transient indecipherable neurochemistry, you can measure testosterone levels. You can measure estrogen levels. You can measure serotonin levels, and so on and so forth. You can measure all of this. Measuring it does not give you the subjective experience of that person, though. And if you believe that measuring and comprehending something does, I suggest you go to a doctor, like I did today, exhausted, and explain your circumstances. And yeah, he'll comprehend it. He won't be able to relate to it because he looks like he slept mighty fine. I don't know what else to say to this, because quite frankly, anyone who thinks that you can do subjective experience transference as one-to-one and then be in a position to make correct judgments about how and why and should and would is, quite frankly, off his rocker. If he's actually convinced of that, that take some random subscriber, Raging Golden Eagle. He mentioned that, it took him a while to get past the, if I can do it, why can't you thing, which is, it is instinct to think that. It is instinct to think that. But anyone who thinks that Raging Golden Eagle and Stardust are interchangeable persons, well, that's the kind of person who also thinks that we can exchange experiences and relate to those experiences in unequal terms and understand in the secondary meaning perfectly fine. Or let's say Raging Golden Eagle has chronic migraines. You're just saying, even though I've never had chronic migraines, I can relate to that. If that's what you meant, unless you meant comprehension, I'm on board with you. We can comprehend pretty much everything. Relate and understand, not so much. Now, I don't want to keep on talking. I think if I explained my points reasonably well. Final point. Subjective suffering, subjective experience, that experiential aspect, cannot be transferred to other people. Maybe it will be in 100, 200 years, but at this current date, we cannot do that. Your experience is yours and mine is mine, and that is relative based on our environment, on our experiences, on the way our genes interact with that environment, on a myriad of factors, plethora of factors. And that is not the same thing as comprehending. We spend years reading textbooks comprehending things. It doesn't mean if you comprehend, how a tadpole matures into a frog, that doesn't mean you can relate to it. Not at all. Very, very different. It doesn't mean you understand what the tadpole is going through. Very, very different things. And sometimes it is important to be very precise with our language, which I was in the previous video. I'll chalk it up to just being tired. I'm trying to rectify that here. Important difference between comprehension and understanding. And incidentally, you have this at least in German, which is this foreign language I know best, you have the same issue, I think, with verstehen and begreifen. For those of you, it's pretty much the same thing. I mean, there's something implicit about understanding that has within it sympathy, empathy, relating. Begreifen is you understand, you grasp it, you comprehend it, and that's it. So this could be, I'm positing, a possible universal distinction in a lot of languages, at least. But I don't want to make that kind of bold statement just yet. But maybe it's interesting to think about. Hope that clarified things for both the gentlemen and the people out there. We have to be semantically distinct. We have to pay attention to our diction. And this is why, as much as I admit to making a mistake in my diction in the previous video, it's important to pay attention to the words we use. This is why language isn't just a means of getting the message across, no matter how or what we say. We have to be precise about what we're saying, because it can lead to misunderstanding. And misunderstanding in this context, it's also a bit ambiguous, but it can lead to certainly to a lack of comprehension, and we don't want that. So, distinction between comprehension and understanding, subjective experience transference, and so on. I mean, I've said it all. I'll talk to you guys hopefully soon. Everyone take care. Bye-bye.